Welcome to Switch Comics. My name is Marco, and today I am joined by Gary B to talk about something super special, and that is Need, your new micro novel. Would that be a proper term?
Yeah, just short
Or
fiction.
mini novel? Short fiction. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, that's all. Just a short story.
Or short story. I guess that works. I'm trying to get fancy. Micro novel. You can use that if you want. All right.
Right.
So yeah, I bought it a little while ago, but just been crazy busy. Finally got around to reading it just a few days ago. Really enjoyed it. Regular, novels and books isn't something that's for me. I would say I don't I don't read a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm not sure. Obviously, we're comic people. I don't know how much like kind of regular books do you often read?
Oh, tons. I just got four more in today that I ordered. Four more novels. So I read all the time, and I'm someone I when I'm reading, I'm not just reading one. I think I have 5 books going right now,
Wow,
plus the comics I read. So I read multiple things at the same time.
constantly reading. Yeah.
Yep, I got two
Well,
Conan
yeah.
books going and couple of Logan's Run. I just got a bunch of I always got a bunch of stuff going. Almost finished the Odyssey again, so
Gotcha. Yeah, I find it kind of interesting because not I would say I don't know. I don't want to say most comic readers don't read novels. I
right.
feel like that's true. I don't want to necessarily say that with kind of any fact behind it or whatever, but it's what it feels like to me. Um, but that being said, before we get any too much further into this, if you wanted to kind of briefly um, summarize, give you a little pitch of what Need is about, because I'm going to talk about a little bit about what I've liked and about the book, but I don't want to necessarily get into spoilers, so
Sure.
people can still check it out.
So it's about the main character's name is Alexis, and it's about this woman who's just had garbage handed to her whole life. And she gets another big heaping pile of garbage handed to her in the beginning in the form of an accident at a toy factory. But it ends up being a blessing in disguise. And what this is a short, fast paced erotic horror novella that takes you on a ride from her being a normal, everyday, basically shat upon person to her rise to villainy and this ultimate creature of power. And you know, if if you're in her wake, it's already too late.
Yeah, so again, without really revealing too much, I did enjoy. It had a bit of a mix of everything, or not everything, but good. There was action and the horror elements and the erotic elements, and there was a lot of things going on that were pretty interesting and definitely very different. I wanted to specifically start talking about how the launch of all of this has gone for you, as far as like your expectations going into this, and kind of, were you expecting to, I don't know the numbers you've sold or anything like that, but were you expecting to be kind of where you are you further, or
I'm definitely further, but so when I wanted to release this, the first thing I did was vetted it to some people that I knew I could trust their opinion. I knew would tell me what I needed to tweak, what I needed to fix. So for that, I owe some people like Pocan Joe was one of the first ones. Nick Comic Journey. So I was getting it out there. Bobby Catalano read it as well, but I was getting it out there to some people I knew would give me a good, honest opinion. Because if it's someone that's just going to give you flowers the whole time, it's not going to help
yeah.
you improve anything. So I took their advice, combined it all together. I fixed the little things I needed to fix. I tweaked where I needed to tweak. But overall, I was getting really good response from everybody that read it. And I considered it good response because these are people that don't normally read what I wrote, and they all
Yeah.
and they all really enjoyed it, which was really fun for me to hear. Because when I sent that out, I was like, like the cartoon, like biting your nails and waiting to see what's going to be said and happen, and you're all stressed out. So then I had to, I finished the script, and after I tweaked it, it was all set in its final form. I did some other little changes I needed to change. I also vetted it through my buddy here locally, two guys, um, Dan Can from Out of the Panel Comics and Mikhail Galloway, who wrote my intro, who's been a great friend ever since I met him. And both those guys I saw on YouTube, and then we all realized that we lived in Rochester, so we
Oh,
all
nice.
became friends that way. And we would have never met either if we even had the same comic shop and never crossed each other's path. So how crazy is that?
That's
But
pretty funny. Yeah.
and then my cover artist, Danny Fisher from Drawing Conversation on Instagram and YouTube. Everyone should go check him out. I met him through Mikhail Galloway, who suggested I share the story with him. And then he contacted me, wanted to do the cover, and I said, "Sure, let me know how much." And he was like, "Nope." And he wouldn't take anything. He did the cover, and so I'm making sure I get his name out there as much as possible because he does great things on his channel, and people should see what he's doing. But I got the story, and I made a little short that had this hand opening and with the cover and revealing it. It says coming soon, and I put that out specifically to force myself to release it. Get over being scared. You got to get it out. So I did that, and then and that's after that the unexpected happened. All of a sudden, just from that little short, Instagram went crazy. Like, oh, Gary B's releasing this. Gary B's got something in the pot, especially. And I can't give enough credit and enough thanks because they deserve so much of it to DJ Links and Mark from Legion of Comics. They grabbed a hold of this thing. And they ran with it. They promoted it on both their channels. They promoted it on their Instagrams. They had me on and talked to me about it, and they've championed it. And I knew I was probably at launch in the first week. I was like, hey man, if I sell 25 copies, I'll be happy. Right now I'm almost to 200 copies sold, and there's still a lot of buzz about it. So I like that. The important thing now is I need reviews on Amazon. I got 11 there, and I hope the people that are reading it will go there and give it a review because the review helps it be more searchable. It helps people find it more. But overall, you're asking about the response to it, and it was so positive that I couldn't have anticipated it. I anticipated most people not liking it because there's nothing in this little short story. It's short, but I don't hold back in it. I put everything in it I thought it needed. And regardless of how graphic it was, or I just put it in because I thought that's what the story called for. I thought that was the truest way to tell it, so I just did it. And I tried to make the best story I could that fit the main character in the story, and documented her journey. And there's people that embraced it in the community that I would have never thought would have even looked at it. It's been insane the amount of love and outpouring I've gotten from the community, and just all the people that have embraced it and taken it in. I had people sending me pictures. Look, I ordered 5 copies. Look, I ordered 5 copies. Just it's insane to me that people are ordering multiple copies of it. I think and like DJ ordered 5, Mark ordered 5. I think Nauman's ordered like 15 already. He's given a bunch away, but it's just been nuts. And it's been crazy, the acceptance.
That's incredible. I do got to say that is a really good thing. You mentioned a lot of things. I want to try to break them down. The thing you said about the reviews is something that's very important to continually mention, because I didn't think about leaving a review at all until you just said something, and it's like, oh, well, of course, that'd help you out. Like it's just one of those things. It's like, okay,
beats the algorithm.
Right after making this video, I got to go leave a review. And then I also want to break down on the niche factor of the story, because I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first thing you've put out, right?
No, I've written before under a different pen name, and it was for me to find my voice and see if the way that I told the story resonated with people at all, or if my voice was, or if people just found my voice flat and didn't care.
as far as, especially,
This is my first horror.
in the comic community, is this the first thing people?
Yes,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
and yep, and it was definitely. I mean, the length was deliberate. Um, so everything about it was deliberate, and the format that Amazon ended up printing it in was perfect because it was easy to read.
Hmm. So I think it was incredibly brave. And, everybody has a story they want to tell, but just from a perspective of like, okay, I'm gonna get out there, I'm gonna put my name out there, and then to pick something that would consider to be a pretty niche subject
Yes.
or genre. Now, granted, there is the factor that everybody loves you in the community. Like you're gonna have
That might
people
be
checking it out.
overstated,
Just
but thank you.
you you are a very, very well liked and loved person in the community. I don't think that's overstating. um so even people that this might not be their genre that they're interested in, they're definitely going to check it out because it's you. So that definitely you know definitely helped you, I'm sure, with your success that you've been having. um And but yeah, I just found it very interesting when I first heard about it. I'm like, oh, that's a seems like a very, very small micro niche to go after. But if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Well, it's
And
weird too because everything I do is niche, right? I mean, if you
yeah,
look at my channel, I don't make content that other people make. Everything I do is like in the niche categories. I mean, the only two things I do that are like what anything else has done are my two live shows.
yeah, that's true.
Everything else is kind
Um,
of my own little thing.
oh yeah, yeah, and not to say that it's bad, but to go after something niche.
Yeah,
Um, I just wanted to. I was, I guess, for lack of better words, impressed of again how just bold of a move that was. And it's worked out, so the nicheness didn't hurt you at all. um I think it's interesting because there is a bit of a taboo. It's I don't want to say it's 100% taboo, because in some circles in the comic community, it's very normal, but the as far as like the erotic stuff, it,
right. Some people are just put
there's
off by it instantly.
yeah, there's still some people that are very much like, like, oh, I don't want to look at that, like, um and I don't know, just very, I don't know, like, sensitive about that type of stuff. Now, granted, this being a novel instead of a comic, it's less, less to look at than a comic.
Right. But I mean, even now you're seeing a resurgence in that with Penthouse Comics and the books that Distillery's putting out and some of the other titles out there like Red Room and stuff like that, which don't hold
Yeah,
back on stuff.
Red Room's been great. Don't want to get too much into that, but I do. That's been a great series. I do think it is starting to get more normalized, but it still has a journey ahead of it as far as
Yeah, well,
subcategories of erotic.
it's
But
like it's like everything. Everything's cyclical, right? I mean, this stuff was big in the 80s, and at heart this is a story that I'm writing that appeals to 80s kids that grew up with this kind of stuff.
yeah, I now, granted, obviously, I didn't grow up in the '80s. From a lot of the stuff that I've seen, because I work at a comic shop and all kinds of things come in, and so especially the really goofy ones, I gotta flip through the goofy ones. Um, but it seems to me like a lot of the older erotic stuff wasn't necessarily written well. I'm not saying all of it wasn't, but I would say it seems like a large chunk of it, at least, was just whatever. It doesn't matter what the story is; it's just erotic,
Well, yeah, and I think that's where the focus is wrong, though, right? Because it's in my book because it needed to be in there. It was important to the
Yeah,
character
yeah.
and how she accomplishes what she accomplishes. And it doesn't take away from who the character is. It doesn't disgrace the character in any way, but it wasn't going to be in there to be frivolous. It was going to be in there because it's needed. And the main
Needed.
part is it fits the yeah. The main part is it fits the story, right? It's got if it doesn't fit the
Yeah.
story, it wouldn't be in there. It would just be all
Yeah.
cut. I wouldn't have
No,
wrote it.
and yeah, and that's the point I wanted to make is it does feel like in this, if you want to call this a resurgence now, it does feel like there is a lot more focus on making the stories work and making them good and interesting. And so there's been, I think, some pretty interesting stuff coming out here recently, including your own work.
Thank you.
I did want to kind of lead into since so I got the little bit of knowledge that you also do read novels. I was curious, did you did you always need to be a novel? Did you have any desires to make it a comic, or do you have future desires to transition it into a comic? Or
I
was a
would.
novel always where this was going to be?
Oh, it was going to be a novel first, always, because I've always been a reader. I've always read
Yeah.
novels growing up. I still buy novels. I still read. Whether they're on my Kindle or physical, I still buy and read all the time. But it was always going to be a book first. I would love to see this get accepted and develop somewhere. Like, I think this would be a perfect book for Distillery to do in their magazine format because they tackle the adult content like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this would be a great fit for an indie company like Distillery, or a number of any of them that put out more mature content, like Man Cave Comics, whatever you have out there. I think this is a good story that would fit in those markets really well. And being someplace like that, it tells the audience already what they can expect and what they're getting into. There's
Yeah.
already, because those places come with an expectation.
Yeah. I I would say, okay, for anyone that's unaware, I am working on writing comics, and so I'm very much into this world, and it is a complicated and expensive world getting into making comics. And so that's why I didn't know if perhaps you did want to maybe make it a comic, but making a novel is much cheaper. Unless you can draw, of course, then that definitely helps cut back. But even
Right.
then, comics can still just be a very, very expensive thing to get into. Um, the thing with Distillery, like I do agree that it would work, but I think Distillery is really like only looking for the biggest names and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh, I
So
don't think I'm gonna get picked up by anyone. I'm a nobody in anything. You know what I mean?
yeah, I would just be curious to know if you think you could maybe work on making it a comic yourself, and then maybe fund it yourself with Kickstarter and stuff like that. If you might not have definitive answers for today, but just at least something to kind of
I've
get
thought
thrown
about
around
it,
your head.
and I had someone that developed a little bit of a comic script for it, but I really didn't care for the changes they were making to it. So it'd be something I'd be really protective of.
Could you
Um,
not do this script yourself, the comic script yourself?
I could, but again, like who's gonna buy it from a no name like myself, right?
I
Uh,
I think you could. I think you could make it work. I think because I do wonder. Again, the community loves you, and I feel like there's a lot of people that definitely, you could put out anything and people are interested. But I wonder how many people, because again, I just don't know how many people that read comics do also read novels. Wonder how many people found out that, oh, it's a novel that Gary B's putting out. I'm not as interested.
yeah. Well, I made
Um,
sure that everyone knew because it kind of looks like a comic when you look at the
yeah,
cover, and but I made sure everybody knew this is prose. It's not. There's
yeah,
no
yeah.
pictures inside. It's prose work.
Yeah, so yeah, not saying you're trying to deceive anybody or anything like that, but I'm just curious if you would have an even larger audience if it was a comic. I don't know, just throwing stuff at the wall, throwing ideas.
Right? Oh no,
Um,
I've definitely thought about it. I mean, that's not an avenue I can afford to go down at the moment.
yeah,
So we'll see what kind of life this has, if it keeps going or if it kind of filters out here in another month. You
Well,
know, it's one of
let's
those things. It's on Amazon. It'll keep
yeah,
moving here and there slowly. But
let's continue to live in fantasy a little bit longer. If you were, let's just say, you win the lottery tomorrow, okay? You can pick anybody you want, and you're going to make this thing a comic. Um, who would you pick for interior panels to do Need?
oh, that would be
You can take a second. I know that's a
oh,
tricky one.
that's yeah. It's well, because it needs a definitive style.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
I would probably somebody like Mahmoud Azrar, who is fantastic. I just think his work is phenomenal, and definitely see that. Or anyone that does like the painting, like who did the artist that did Somna, I thought was great. I think they would work well too, doing something like
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
Lotte, right?
right? Yeah, but it's got to be someone that isn't afraid to, there's a lot of visuals in this, and some of them are like wide shots when you're reading it, because I think it reads kind of cinematically, like with the pond scene. Like when I picture that, I see like a panoramic view of it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
I'll,
someone like it's got to be someone that has an adult feel to their art, like Mahmoud Azrar.
I'll throw one at you. What about Panosian?
I also love Dan Panosian's art. I think he's great.
Yeah, that's the one. When I was thinking about it earlier to myself, I was like, that's who I'd pick. At least off the top of my head, I think he'd do a great job.
Yeah, even
Um,
someone like Esad Ribic would be great.
yeah,
The thing is, with a story like this, you can't make it too cartoony. It's got to have an edge to it.
yeah. All
Because
right.
when you draw Alexis, she's gotta look like she's a threat all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'll stick with this for just a bit longer. We're gonna do one more little what if here. Give me three. This should be a little bit easier, but three artists you would like to get for a variant cover or variant covers.
Lucio Perillo,
Solid.
Selena, who is just doing fantastic covers for Red Sonja and other things, and someone I would have to go with Jen Bartel.
Bartel. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm I gotta go with Art Germ all day. All day.
Except sometimes he makes the faces too kiddie. I love Art Germ, and when he doesn't
Yeah.
make their faces too kid like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But sometimes he'll age down the faces some, and I can't. It just takes me away from it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so that is our dream little workshopping. All right. Once you win that lottery, we're gonna be calling some of these names
No,
up. All
no, I
right.
said that about Art German, but yeah, I will buy. There's so many covers of his I've just bought, just looking at it, like it's just a cover buy because it's so perfect.
Yeah, there'll be covers. I'm like, I don't know what this book is, or who this character is, but I'm buying it. It's a great cover.
Right.
um all right, and then so I wanted to ask about Alexis and the story of Need. Um, is there going to be a follow-up? Is there more planned for this character and story? You don't
At
have
the
to get into
moment,
specifics.
at the moment, no. This was written as a one-off because to eventually go in a compilation of short horror stories that I'm writing that would go in a
Okay.
collected book at some point. So I'm
Okay.
already I'm already 8 pages into another one, and I keep going back and changing in those 8 pages. I got to stop changing and just keep going forward. But that's the hardest thing about writing. You're constantly keep going back and changing stuff, and at some point you got to say stop changing and just keep going. Because I must have changed those 8 pages about 1,000 times now. Just like, oh, no, I want to do this now. Now I want, but you will always find that you want to tweak everything constantly, and at some point you're just hurting yourself, and you got to keep moving forward. But everyone's asked me this question. They all want more, and I like that question because I that means the ending worked for me. Worked that I wrote. When I wrote it as an end, you kind of could see where this was going. You know, it left a definitive direction that this story was headed, and leave that up to the end. People can imagine it for themselves. I think to write it is just writing what people already know is going to happen. So I think it'd be
Fair
almost
enough.
like a useless sequel in Hollywood, right? When you're just regurgitating something and kind of making the same thing, but trying to go a little bigger with it. And I don't think that would service the character. Now, the only thing I could see as a good hook is there's something out there that hunts everything. And if
Yeah.
something arrives, and there was hints of that extinguished the first, the suppressed, if that came to Earth to extinguish them again.
See, that's what probably got me most interested. When you learn how powerful they are, and then you're like, why, why didn't they do this sooner? What's this deal with that? Like, why
The
is
secret
now the
sauce was the
time?
melding.
What was that?
The secret sauce was the melding together.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
You're
I get
finding
that,
the host.
but also, just kind of like, yeah, the backstory on how that came to be. And again, I'm not trying to get too spoiler with it, but that's where I ask the most questions of being like, I wonder what's going on in that particular part, because
Good, because you were supposed to. Because so I took that lesson from John Carpenter, right?
yeah,
Everyone knows my favorite movie, The Thing.
our favorite movie.
Yes, and but what doesn't he do in that? He doesn't explain the creature's origins, and you never know what the true form of the creature is, which leaves it as something that's even scarier, more mysterious. It creates that want. It invests you in it, even though you can't get that answer. And I kind of
Yeah,
wanted that for this creature too. Like a little bit about what happened to it. Um, you don't know how it got here, and you don't really know its original form because I make sure not to tell it in the story. Just like in the story, I don't give the main character Alexis ethnicity or skin tone. I leave that open for the reader to interpret. I only give her two characteristics: dark hair and blue eyes. Everything else is left up to the imagination of the reader, so they can identify with her. Because when they read her, they're actually going to create her in their own mind as they see her, and it makes it when you create that image yourself, it makes you identify more with the character.
yeah, yeah. I
Like, these are the weird
so
thoughts
let's
I have
see.
when I'm writing something.
I want to touch on, because you're kind of talking about rewriting, and you get to you're at 8 pages, but you can go back and you rework those 8 pages. um I find it interesting because people have very different writing structures and writing formats and everything. They just the way that it works for people. um and I'm not a I don't really go back and tear up my what I've written. I feel like I do that kind of preemptively, where I'll just sit there and I'm just sitting there staring at my screen for hours and hours and hours, and then I'm like, all right, now I got it. And then I write down what I've been thinking about and struggling with in my head for so long, and then it's kind of the same thing, but without having to delete so much, I guess.
Now, see with me, once I start writing something, all of a sudden those characters start finding their voices, and I know more what they
Yeah,
would and wouldn't do. So I can have like, all right, at this point, I want this to happen to this character. I could be like 6 pages in and already tell that's not going to happen with this character. That's not who they are. This idea I had won't work anymore. I'll still write that idea down. I might use it with a different character in a different place, someplace else, but it's weird how they develop. They take on a life of their own in your head, and you all of a sudden you know their voice. You know what they would do, what they wouldn't do. You know how they would react and how they wouldn't react in certain situations, and you spend time living in their headspace, which is a weird thing to say, but
no, I totally get that. I find it kind of similar to um I think also the way that I write, I structure things very much in like almost like a film format. Especially since I'm writing for comics, it's a lot of stage directions of like what this panel would look like and what characters are doing, and instead of like descriptive, colorful language that you would see in a
Right.
novel. Um, and so I find it similar. I think about film a lot and how, for example, like in Breaking Bad, Jesse was supposed to die in the first season, but then you actually get that actor in there, and then you see the character in a different way, and then they're like, no, we can't kill him off. He's got it. This is this pair's got to stick together,
Right.
and I find I try to do that when I'm writing is I have ideas of like things I want to happen, um, but not so much plan out their reactions to it because I'm forming the character and kind of getting to know the character like you were talking about. And then so when I get to that point, I'm like, okay, and then this happens. Then I'm like, how would they react to that? How does that make them feel? And so it feels almost out of my control at that point.
Right. And I think a good example of that for me in media is the janitor from Scrubs. He was only supposed to be in the first episode or two, and then that was it. Neil came in and nailed that character so well. It
Yeah.
made it so special that he was throughout the whole series. And you can't imagine that series without the rivalry between him and JD.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be something probably, yeah, when they're writing, it's like, we just, we're just going to throw this in real quick. And it's not something you think about of like, oh, I want to create this, mainstay character. It just, things just happen to turn out that way.
Right.
Um, and then, so you said you have one more book that you're 8 pages into or so, if you don't delete them. Do you have kind of like plans? You're talking about like doing like a little collection. Do you have like kind of like notes and stuff written down for other stories, or are you kind of just full focused on
Full
one thing at a
focus
time?
on what I do at a time. I mean, the ideas come to me, and if I try to force an idea and just sit there and try to think, it won't happen. My mind will come up with something. Like when I came up with this, it just popped in. I had the basic idea of Alexis. I started writing her. Um, try to stay away from the cliches like a car crash in the beginning, like everyone does. Just stupid stuff, right? Like it had to be a unique accident. It had to be a unique start to it. It had to start running because I wanted this to be a read where you sit down and in a half hour, if you're stuck someplace, you got something quick you can whisk through, and you just had a good time and your weight went quick. Or it's also geared toward comic readers. You sit down with a comic book, you're only going to be with that book for 10 to 20 minutes. I wanted this story to be similar. So that way, if you're a comic reader and you're reading this, you're still only investing the same amount of time, maybe two comics worth into it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but as far as what's coming next, I just have this idea I'm working on now, and it keeps evolving. So it was going to be a short story. I don't know how long it'll end up being. That'll dictate itself as I'm writing it. I won't preemptively end something just because I decided on a page count when I started. And
Yeah.
also, I won't preemptively end it, but I won't draw it out either. Like I thought the Alexis story would be longer, but it drew to its natural conclusion to me while I was writing it. I'm like, no, this is where it needs to end. If I draw it out, it's gonna start weakening it, and because it wasn't the structure I wanted. I wanted a fast paced, quick read that takes you into the world, draws you in, makes you identify with the main character, and then kind of being appalled at what she's doing at the same time.
Yeah. There's no point really, I would think, for a novel to try to think about a page count at all. Um, and just you're just kind of going with it. And novels vary in size, and I don't even think. Again, I'm not a novel reader, so correct me if I'm wrong, but whereas in comics, you are very much, when you're writing, you need to be thinking, what ends this page? What ends this page? What does
Right.
this page look like with this page? Um, I think when you're writing a novel, do you think about the end of a page ever?
You think about the end of a chapter.
Yeah, but it's not a,
You
not a
know,
constant thing that, like a comic would be.
because when a chapter ends, you want them to go, "Oh, next chapter."
Yeah, yeah,
They're like, "Oh well,
yeah.
I can wait to get back to it." you know, because like chapters are
Um,
natural breaks in a story, so you kind of want them to be water and to go into the next one.
yeah, I feel like with comics, you don't necessarily have to, but you kind of need that end of chapter feel on the end of each page. Like you need to, it feels like you need to convince them to keep turning each and every page.
Right.
I don't know if maybe comic readers are more fickle in their interest um or what it is, but when I but I also notice that when I'm reading comics myself and I'm enjoying them, and you get that moment of like, I gotta flip this page as fast as I can, like I gotta get to this next thing because that was a crazy thing just happened. Um, and then obviously, ending an issue is also super important that way as well. Where like, I can't wait for the next one to come out. Um, but yeah, it is kind of interesting to think about the different writing formats and the requirements and the differences between them in that
And
regard.
I think too, everybody's brain works different. Everybody's
True.
creativity flows in different ways, and there's going to be a right way for each person to do it for themselves.
Very, very fair points as well. I think the last thing that I really was curious about was kind of the behind the scenes production aspect of actually physically getting a book out there. From what it seems like to me, you didn't print these and are sitting on stacks of them, right? It's through Amazon, right?
Right. Yep. So yep, it costs them for this book like $2.30 to make each copy. All right. So basically, like when this book sells, like I set the price point for it. And but the important thing for me, and the reason I wanted to go through Amazon is, you know, single income person with a kid. I need something that's affordable, and I still want to get my vision out there. I need something that gives me a marketplace where eyes can find the product. Amazon
Sure.
gives me an instant global audience. It gives you the KDP structure is not difficult to follow. It's there in like 10 sentences. So you just set up your word to those guidelines, type it out. It has a spell check for you. Um, you can run it through that before you send it to other people. It'll take care of more the biggest, most egregious ones. Then you can send it off to your friends to have them check for things that don't flow right, stuff. But the most important thing is to get eyes on it that'll give you honest feedback. So before you release something, you're given the best product you're capable of out to the public, right? And I didn't want anyone to buy this and feel cheated. I didn't, and it's a short, quick read. I didn't want to charge a lot of money for it. I wanted it to be affordable. I wanted people to be able to purchase it and be able to own it, and it wasn't something where they had to break their wallet to do it. I wanted it accessible.
Gotcha.
Because the fact of as you pointed out earlier, that it's very niche, that turns down the acceptability a little bit, but the price point turns up the acceptability.
True.
So it's like a balance, right? And then I have people reading this that don't read this type of thing, and and so far the greatest compliment I've got about this is people want more of the world and more of Alexis,
Yeah.
and for me, that's where I think I succeeded, right? Because I wanted to write a villain that people were kind of rooting for, and kind of felt bad for her, but kind of knew she was doing the wrong things. And the same with the erotic parts, right? It's kind of saucy, it's kind of spicy, it's kind of turning people on. At the same time, they're kind of grossed out by it because the things that are happening in those scenes, if you think about it, they're not really good for the people they're happening to. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's some
there's a
questionable
horrific
acts
element to it.
happening. So did you have to put any money into it for to working through Amazon and stuff like that, or how does that work
No,
exactly?
there's no initial cost, just your time and your work.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
choose it and you choose your profit. Amazon gets their cut, which is what it is. This is a way for any self-published author to get a book out there. And the thing is, though, a lot of people do it this way, but you're gonna find you're gonna find stuff that's not edited. You're gonna find stuff that's full of misspelled words, that has sentences with no period. So you got to do your due diligence if you're gonna. At least for me, like the biggest black eye for me would be release something to the community that trusts me and have it be hot garbage with no effort to edit it, no effort to structure it and make it presentable, or even make it coherent. I
Oh yeah.
mean, I've been sent stuff from people that want me to read stuff, and I'm like, dude, you didn't even put a period in any of that. No one knows where that sentence is supposed to end. You didn't, or you have five misspelled words in your first paragraph. I'm like, you know,
Yeah,
if
no.
you're gonna put something out, you're gonna expect people to read it. If you're gonna expect people to spend hard-earned money, especially in today's economy, you got to do the best you can to give them something that's quality.
No,
Now,
no.
some
What you
people may
delivered
read
is
it and just not
definitely
identify with that type of story and not think it's good, but it doesn't mean that you didn't put quality into it to try to make it the best you could.
yeah, what you delivered is definitely a quality product. Um I I can't say I noticed anything wrong as typos or uh anything that made me go like, "Oh, what does he mean by that?" Or
Because
I
that
think,
was only fixed like 600 times.
yeah. What you took care of it though. You took care of it and you delivered a professional novel. And it looks good, it feels good, and I was just curious about and if anybody else listening, might not know that they have that opportunity. I feel like a
Yep.
lot of creative endeavors are halted um by kind of like a paralysis of like, well, I don't have money to get into doing different things. I won't be able to print a book or um uh, for me myself, I did hold off on writing comics because I was like, I'm never going to be able to like put anything out.
Right. I
um
can't afford that. Yeah. And this is just your time. It's KDP, and you just look up KDP, and there's literally instructions on how to do it, which are very easy to follow. And again, you set your own price point, so you got to decide whatever it is that you're writing is worth it to you. Um, to do the work and put it out there. This has done its job for me. It's got my voice out there. It's got me in front of audiences that I didn't even know I would have. So it's been fun. It's been good. It's done. It's been working good for me. And to instantly release it and say like have people in the UK like DVH and stuff buying it over there and getting it instantly. It's an
yeah.
instant global release. People in Austria, my buddy Torsen, people all over the world though, people I know that buy it and because it's available in those countries.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, you got some people out there that are going to hate on Amazon forever, but
So I'm
you
like, oh, I
can't.
was going to do something local here and try to go with a printer, right?
Yeah.
But where am I going to sell it? Just here locally and hope to sell 50 copies.
Yeah. And that always creates the problem. Yeah, you could order way too many, and then it's like, well, you just wasted a bunch of money. You're just sitting
Well,
on
we
product
see the
that's not
cliche with
moving.
these writers that wrote something and they have like four boxes of it stacked in their house that they never sold, right?
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's really interesting and definitely seems like it was very useful to be able to work with Amazon like that, and not really take a lot of the stress out of it, and to just be like, let's see what happens. So I- it I would like, if you would want to give a tease, it can be of any degree. If you don't want to, it's fine. If your next, what you're working on,
The next one
it,
I'm working on right now, and it could change. The working title is Vera the Vile, and there's been what the world thought was going to be a religious rapture was going to happen on the earth was something else that was quite different, which it was a rapture, but they called it the rapture. But what happened is all these demons poured out from a dimension and inhabited the planet. Uh, all these things that open have disabled anything that works electronically. So people are basically forced back in the Stone Age. There's not many that survived, and as people learning how to survive again with strange creatures from other dimensions, and it opens up with this woman Vera bent over in a river, washing her child's blood off her hands because her child was just murdered by one of these creatures.
So, sticking with the horror.
Yes.
Do you
I
think,
grew up horror. I mean, I watched horror since I was a kid. I love horror.
do you think that's all, which wouldn't be a bad thing, but do you think that's all that you ever would be interested in is writing in horror, or do you think that's just where you are now and you might do something else later?
It's whatever. It's whatever strikes you. You never know.
Yeah.
There's gonna be little. This is gonna be like the closest. It's gonna be kind of barbaric. It's gonna be kind of horrific. It's gonna be kind of sci-fi at the same time. So it's a couple mix of different genres. But I think no matter like the regular fiction I'm gonna write now, I think most of it's gonna have horror aspects to it because it's what I mostly watch. It's what I mostly have read and watched growing up. I think my favorite novel of all time is Magica by Clive Barker, and that's like a 12 or 1300 page novel. Fantastic. And I grew up reading Clive Barker obsessively.
Do you think you will get to writing something large like that at some point? Or
I don't know.
that's
Like
a big undertaking.
I'm over 50 now. I don't know if I have that big of a piece of work in me. Like that was an exceptional thing. Like I don't know any authors that write that big. It's
Yeah.
something, unless they're like what, like Robert Jordan or like these Wheel of Time, or it's just different. There's certain authors that's what they do. I don't think that's what I do. I think I'm a short story guy because I grew up reading a lot of pulps.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I love pulp stories. I love the quick you get in, you get punched, you get out, and you just had an experience. And I like for them to come in, they present and those they're to the point. What takes me out of some books is they'll describe something for 4 pages. I don't care. Like I will purposely go back in my stories and I will take out parts things I described because I think it's too much.
Yeah.
Because I think it hurts the pacing.
As someone that doesn't read novels, I will say that is something that turns me away from it. I've read some before, like I'm a big Star Wars guy, so like I'd read some Timothy Zahn and stuff like that. But yeah, when it would just feel like you're using every word you could ever think of to describe a pebble that we're walking past and never going to see again. It's like,
Right.
I don't care.
Right. It's not really important to the start. Like, oh, but we're making the world real. Your mind will make the world real.
Yeah. You kind of need to let the reader envision their own thing, even if it might not be 100% exactly what you're thinking, as long as it's working for the reader.
Right. For me, that's the power of reading. Right. Is activating your imagination while you read it. You're filling in the blanks. You're supposed to.
Yeah. Something kind of on that note of like, you're saying you think you're much more of a short story type person. Something I've really been enjoying. I thought was really neat. I love Scott Snyder, and all the stuff that he works on, and he's been just putting out these 3-issue comics for I don't know, like a year now, maybe or so. And it's been really neat. Like they're just like really tight, punchy stories. And I would love to be able to ask him what kind of what the idea is, if he just enjoys writing that way, or if it's more of a they always say number one comics sell better. So if he's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna just tell a short story then and then move on to the next thing and tell another one, and that's another number one for me, you know. But
Well, I think that's the freedom of being of independent comics, right? You can just tell one story. You don't have to drag it on, and you don't have to weaken the characters by having them go on years and years and years. You can go in, you can tell your story, and it can be over.
yeah, um, yeah, it just depends because like when I'm thinking about writing, you know, things too. Like there's one I'm working on now that I've really debated on. I'm like, do I want this to be a long story or a short story? And I'm just like going back and forth. I'm like, because you can really develop characters and take them from one crazy drastic place and over a long period take them somewhere completely different, and it's a really magical journey that you can go on in that aspect, and you can take, you know, you can do a big crazy change in a short amount of time too, but
You see
it
that happen in
feels
comics too. We're like, this is supposed to be 12 issues. Oh, now we're going to go with 16. We got a little bit more to tell now.
true,
So, I mean,
true.
that happens.
But yeah, now I'm kind of just rambling and throwing stuff off the cuff of my mind. So I'd like to thank you. Did you have any other aspects you wanted to touch up on before we say our goodbyes?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again to the community. This has been so much fun for me. Just to have it so universally accepted by everybody has just been like the best gift anyone can get. Right? It's just you put something out, and Mark from Legion put it best. He's like this. He goes, you had something in your mind. Now I'm holding it in my hand. It's kind of it's strange in a way, right?
Yeah, it's a wild thought process.
It was in your head. Now it's here. And this thing became a reality. I was really scared to first get it out to the people to vet it, and I owe them a lot of things, and then get it out to the public. And because I'm nobody, but there's enough people that know me in the community where you know you don't know what they're going to think once they read something that's from you.
Yeah. You put it
And
out and like,
especially something
Gary
that,
B's kind of bad at writing things, guys.
well, it's just especially something that's just it's so for me. I think it's unapologetically what it is, and it embraces it.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing in this story where I think I should hold back here a little bit. No, I just went for it.
Well, I gotta say, man, congratulations. What you've done has been really interesting, and especially, uh, it's been very inspiring for me. Like I said, I've been working on writing stuff for a little bit. I'm getting things going, and to see somebody else in the community a little bit further along and actually putting something out and people loving it, and you did a great job. Uh, and it's really exciting, and I hope to see more people in the community, you know, that do have interest, because again, I do think there is a big fear, what do they call it? I can't remember, but paralysis fear thing, where it's like I just don't think, you know, I'll actually be able to put anything out, so what's the point of trying? And I think
Yeah, you just got to do it at some point.
yes, damn straight, you just got to do it. And I do know there is one other person in the community. Again, I keep meaning to ask if it's a public thing or not, but I'm not going to mention them. But I know there's somebody else that's working on the comic too, and I'm super excited to see that whenever that comes to be.
Right.
And I just think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of cool people in the community, and I know not everybody's interested in writing, but I want to see the people that are out there that are wanting to be creative and actually wanting to make something in this hobby that we all enjoy. And yeah, again, just congrats. Hope it continues to be more and more successful, and you get around to putting out your second or second official, or however you want to
Right.
say it. But
Second
yeah, I will be here to continue supporting you. For anyone that hasn't picked up Need or wants to pick up 10 copies of Need, say I only picked up one. I didn't think, when I saw people on Instagram they bought 10, I'm like, well, duh, that seems like it makes sense. I don't know why I only grabbed one.
You know, like, why
But
Ted? What are you going to do with Ted?
to support you, and well, especially for me, I can put it in my giveaway stuff, and I could put some at my shop or something. I don't know. I can figure out something. But yeah, if you don't have a copy, there is a link in the description. It is on Amazon. Incredibly affordable. How much is it again, Gary?
So if you get the Kindle version, it's $2.99. If you get a
Super, super.
physical copy, it's $6.99. And that was another reason to go with Amazon. You can get a digital or a physical copy, and it can fit the way someone likes to read.
Well, for sure, for sure. Yeah, if they just wanted, some people can't stand reading digital things, and some people love it. So, but yeah, super, super affordable. A great short little dark horror erotica, and I had a lot of fun with it. Can't wait to see what you put out next. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Gary.
And thank you all out there for supporting me. I'm really humbled by it. Thank you all so much.
Check out his stuff. I'm pointing the wrong way. Check out this man's stuff. I can't do it. Wherever he is.
Right?
Thank you all so much for watching. And have a good night.